All right. So yeah, as long as you're in the group, on our WhatsApp group, you will get the recording at the end of the class. So it's easier for you to kind of go and follow if you missed anything. But it's also essential that you focus in the class daily basis, because that way you don't have to watch that video, but you can spend your time elsewhere. For example, Udemy. So you don't have to rewatch the video that we did, because you already focused and you already know what's in it. So in Udemy is that we bought, over the years, we bought a lot of courses. So these are our, my learning means that these courses is ours. We bought it from Udemy. And if you don't have access to it, let me know. I'll give you the access. But here, a lot of people finishes few courses that really helps them. And few of the courses that I recommend. So if you feel like you're short on manual testing, so this will be one, and this will kind of make you into somebody who has like pretty good knowledge on manual testing side, because you have to be a tester in heart, right? It's not about just learning automation. You see, if you are a tester, first you become a tester, then you become an automation engineer. Automation engineer is just to help testing, right? It's not like something separate, right? So you have to be a good tester in order to be a good automation tester. Now, this is one of the course. This is a 2 hours one. And this is, I believe this one also 2 hours. This is kind of gives you a little bit more. She is, okay, so she's a project lead, 10 years experience. So she explains in her own way. So if you take this one or that one, or take both, just to get a very solid understanding of testing, because that way we can still target a job called QA and analyst, right? So we can still target QA analyst even with these two, just these two. But now QA analyst also comes with some manual test, like these are manual testing. So both of them manual testing, but they will expect you to know SQL, and they will expect you to know API, right? API testing can be done manually as well, right? So I would say if you did these two, and you did one of the SQL course, so if you just do pretty much, if you do a search here, search here, and you're going to find a lot of SQL courses that we bought over the years. So this is one, and this is Oracle Developer. This is another one. This is another one. So either one that you learn or do one of the course, then that should be completing to become a QA analyst, right? These three. But in addition to that, in the class, we're teaching you guys Jira and other tools that will pretty much help you to understand what you need at work, what you will be doing. But also Jira is included in, I think, in this course. So that will give you a very good understanding. Recently, one of the fastest way to get a job is that if you're a mobile tester, your interview becomes so easy, right? So mobile tester with APM, it's really like what I'm seeing in the market right now. It's pretty easy to get a job, because not a lot of people focuses on mobile testing, right? And if you are expert on that side, it will be very easy for us to place you. But I'm not going to press on that, as long as we're targeting two of the these two titles we're targeting, right? QA engineer is somebody who knows how to write code, so you know Java and you know how to automate. So this is the course that I recommend for the QA engineers, right? Even for the QA analyst, because many of you guys, when you go in the market, we're gonna show your previous title as QA analyst, not QA engineer. The moment we show you, even though we're teaching you automation, the moment we show on your resume that you're a QA engineer, what happens is that they expect you to do coding exercise before even the interview happens, right? So imagine like 10 of you guys are in the market, and now everybody comes back with, hey, I need to do this coding exercise, right? So, and they can already judge your coding skills and say, okay, no, not qualified, right? So we don't want that. But also, if you get the job as a QA engineer, you have a lot in your plate. So we start with QA analyst job, where they give you a couple of months, or at least first 5-6 months, to kind of just get used to the team, learn what, like do the manual testing, learn about the team, and contribute. So you feel like you're doing the work. You don't feel like you're just waiting to do some coding, right? So that's why recently we're targeting this more than this, right? Because we've seen people actually coming back and getting fired after taking this. So we're going to be targeting this when you are in the market. And the salary difference between these two, not a lot, right? Maybe like $5,000 or $10,000 difference. So this one is going to be over 100, as you saw this morning. Somebody got a job. And then and this one is probably a little bit more, 120, 130, and things like that, because but you're going to be as good as a developer, right? Somebody who can develop an application are considered to be a QA engineer, right? So just keep that in mind. What I need you guys to do is that if you feel like you want to go ahead and then reach out to me and say, look, I'm doing this on the side, I want to do this thing as fast as I can, then my first recommendation is this. So you can take a screenshot or something on your computer. So this one is one. Then we got this. So 1, 2, 3, and then do some SQL, which is 4. I think somebody is already working on it, 57%, which is great. As soon as these 4 completes, it will give you some knowledge, or at least it will give you enough knowledge for us to start marketing and start looking for getting you a job. So
can you point it again?
Okay, so this is the one, right? This is one. This one starts with Selenium. So look how many things you're learning from this one. This is an 8-hour course, right? You're learning Selenium, you're learning Cucumber, you're learning Java, you're learning Jenkins, and you're learning Maven. Okay, and this framework is called BDD, Behavior Driven Development, and that is the hardest framework out there for automation guys. Then you're learning pretty much process, manual testing, how to do manual testing, what are the testing essentials. So that will be this. And this is just because, you want to learn from another person, you can do this one as well. These two are pretty much same thing. It's just that 2 different people are giving their perspective at this point. The reason I would say go do these both is because they're not lengthy classes. This is, I think, 2 hours, and this is also 2 hours. And then lastly, SQL, I'm not gonna pretty much say spend too much time on it, but as long as you know how to write some queries, then you should be fine, right? And once that is done, right, and you feel like, okay, you know what, we're still doing the class, but I think I'm done with this 3, you can still reach out to me. I'll do some evaluation to see how far you are, and then we can go for marketing as well. But join the class regularly, because look, out of sight, out of mind. So we're not a like institute, we're not a university where we know exactly who to reach out and say, hey, look, you didn't join this class. No, but just be here. Your presence shows that you're motivated, right? So if you're present in the class, you're motivated, and again, you're in front of us, so you will get to hear things. You can reach out to us, and that way it helps us to remember who you are. And you're still focusing in class, but then if you do this in the background, that will get you ready faster than what we're trying to do. All right, with that said, if you're missing access to this, just let me know. I'll give you our login information, so you can go ahead and do it. But if you find a separate class that combines all 3 or something, or maybe something better, just text me. I will buy that course, as long as it makes sense for us, right? And then you can start taking it. So all right, so that was just a briefing for Udemy. If you guys don't have any question, we're going to move on to the next, as I said, pop quiz. Now let's talk about, for those who have been here for last several months doing this class, right? And one of the interview questions that I always ask, right? And even if I hire, so sometime when I do interview questions and I'm hiring a manual tester, one of the important questions that I ask is that, hey, look, what will you do? Tell me beginning to end, explaining to me that when I give you a requirement, in order to do your testing, what will you do from the beginning to end? And that is the question that I ask all the time. And it's because that gives me a very good perspective of the person's understanding. And that also tells that the interviewer that you at least know what the tester should do, right? So that doesn't mean that you have to follow their company standard. It could be your company standard. Every company is different. So whatever standard that you know, you can tell them, which means what? STLC. So you can actually use STLC for that, for explaining. I'm going to be asking somebody a question, but I'm going to giving you right now the pointers that you can use. So number one in STLC, you basically study requirement, right? Number two, you start planning, right? So let's say test plan. Number three is, let's say, number four. Number five, we have test execution. Number six, we have bug logging and tracking, right? So this is your full STLC. And then number seven, I'm going to add some stuff, right? Number seven is UAT testing. Number eight, once the UAT testing is done and released to production. What is production in the meantime? Who wants to answer that?
Maintenance.
No, what is production?
Release the product for the end user use.
Right.
Yeah, when you release the product.
Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a story right now. Okay, so think about a story, and so you can explain. It could be you talking to a friend and they ask you, hey, what do you learn? I mean, what is, like, let's say somebody just ask you, tell me, what do you do? From beginning to end, anybody, right? At least you will be able to say, this is what you do, because this is all you do as a tester. This is all you do. There is nothing else. Everything else, like communication, reaching out to person, these are just comes with the job, right? Where if you need something, you have to ask somebody. You go in the meeting and other things. Meetings happens because they want to give you some knowledge so that way you can do your job, or they want to tell you some things that is relevant to the product that you're testing. But STLC, think about this way. First, requirement study. So when the developer is working on a requirement, you are, in the meantime, you're studying the requirement. Because why? Because you need to understand the requirement in order to come up with your planning and scenarios, right? So how can you plan something if you don't know what is it that you have to do? So understanding the requirement first will help you to do the next phases of the STLC. Now, you may see in STLC like, oh, 3 or 4 phases, but this is kind of like including end to end, meaning from the beginning to end, what you need to do in order to say testing is done. Like, when can you say I'm done with testing, right? In theory, if you don't have a definition of done, then you can go on and on with testing, right? Almost on and on, right? You will probably not see an end. So you need to see like exactly what you finish from the list in order to say that I'm done, right? So first you study requirement, and why, right? Why do you study requirement? Is because you have to understand that. That's the first thing. You have to know the product. You have to understand the application. You have to understand why the company is building the product and why somebody will use it to pay for that service, right? You have to understand that business side of it as well, to provide your expertise, because in the future, after several months, you become SME. SME means subject matter expert. So you will become a testing expert or an SME on the application. So there will be potential where you will train their internal employees on the application. So because you're the last person, you're the person who tested the application, you have the most knowledge. Therefore, you can train other, not engineers, other people who's working for the same company. They are the end user. So if it's an internal application, let's say you're building an application for tellers, then you may end up writing a guidelines. So that way, when the tellers go for training, they use that guidelines in order to train themselves. Okay. Then you do the planning, right? Planning is basically in Agile. So if you're in Agile or Waterfall, we talked about that. But if you are in Agile, planning happens in your mind. Like, we just do the planning without writing any piece of document. But you can also write the document. Is optional for you, but nobody will look at it. So planning is pretty much to say, okay, I'm going to take this requirement. What kind of testing I will do? Does that testing needs regression test? Does this will be what will be automated, right? What test case should be automated, what test case should not be automated, what are the test data that do we need, who should I contact, who's the point of contact, right? So these are few essential items within your test plan should be included, right? Then we write test scenario. Who wants to answer what is the test scenario before I give you guys a definition of this?
The story.
Test scenario is a story. Is that your answer?
Yes.
Test scenario are bunch of commands or steps that test the program or the automation, and has specific outcomes. Like
Correct.
yeah, there we go.
Right. So when you say story, like if you're in agile, this will be story, right? Requirement is the story. Okay. So don't get confused. Now, test scenarios is basically something is that, okay, you think about scenarios, right? So if you are in Manhattan, right, and you're coming to Queens, let's say you're coming to specifically in Jackson Heights, right? Give me some scenarios in terms of what method of transportation can you take, not what you will take, but can you take? What are the options you have available to you? You have option train only. You just take the train from one station to another and you're done, right? That is one scenario. Now you're a person who also, let's say, wants to explore other options. You don't want to do train today, then you can do bus and train. That's your second scenario. The third one is that, okay, you know what? I want to be healthy. You can just walk, right? That's your third scenario. The fourth scenario is that you went with the bike, so you have to buy, take the bike, right? So that's your fifth scenario. You just bike back to Jackson Heights. Your seventh scenario will be, okay, you got the bike, you did halfway, and then you decided to hop on a train with the bike. That's your another scenario. Then let's say you did bike and bus. And think about the endless scenarios that you can come up with. It's pretty much, it gets really, really big list in terms of scenarios, right? Now, here's the deal, right? With the scenario, it has to be realistic. Otherwise, you're going to be writing so many test cases that that really going to put a lot of work on you. Now, let's say if somebody's taking a helicopter from Jackson Heights to Queens, is it possible? Or is it completely not possible? It is possible, right? Somebody can actually take a helicopter from Manhattan and then come to Queens, right? Just tell me if you agree to this before I move on.
No, it not seems like realistic.
It is
I mean,
possible, but it may people will do that,
That's story.
right? How many people will do that? That's my question. So in an application, right? This is what we think about when we come up with like scenario is that likelihood of somebody taking that route, which is taking a helicopter to Queens, it's very small amount of users. Let's say very small group. So it could be Donald Trump, it could be somebody who's really rich. So now we're talking about maybe 5 or 6 person as a group. Now, if you cover that test scenarios, if you cover that scenario, right, and you have to test it, maybe it's going to be expensive for you to test, meaning you have to spend more time and more energy. Now, you can make a decision and say, look, these are edge cases. I'm not going to test it right now, right? This is highly unlikely, but it could happen. Yes. So that's one thing. But there are other scenarios that is very unrealistic, and this is outright you take it out of the equation, right? The other scenario is that somebody is from Manhattan is taking a jet. Is it possible? Somehow you can make it possible, but it is unrealistic. Maybe the group of user who will do that is almost close to zero. And you don't even bring that to the table. You don't even tell them like this is a scenario. We just basically avoid those type of scenario where it is unrealistic. But taking a helicopter, maybe possibilities there, we call them edge cases. Okay. Edge cases meaning likelihood of somebody doing that scenario will be very low, but still if we have the time and resource, we'll cover it. But if we don't, then we are going to leave it alone. So just keep that in mind. Now, every time you write a scenario, each of the scenario will be a different test case, or you can combine multiple scenario to make one test case. Now, if you're doing manual testing, I recommend you take each scenario and make into a separate test case. Okay, that is the manual testing. So what is the difference between test scenario and test case? Now that I just explained to you, what is the difference? Because, you know, remember, this thing, you as a tester should have it in your heart. Because why? Because that's the only job you have. This is what you do. Now, if you are not proficient of knowing these things, then it'll hurt you in the long run, because you're going to be ambiguous, you're going to be confused, and you don't know really what it is that you have to do. So now my question to you is that scenario, test scenario and test cases, what is the difference between these two?
Okay, test case as a step-by-step on how to do the test, including in expected output, actual output, pass or fail.
Okay.
Whereas test scenario, it's you know, you just basically well, the biggest difference is in a test case actually show you how to do the test step by step. Test scenario does not. It just basically gives you you know, I guess an option.
Okay, so I mean, you're right about the test case, correct? And I'll start with test case first, right? Anybody else want to provide their input before we move forward?
Yeah, test case is basically the step-by-step direction to test the application. And test scenario is basically what is the different way that we can test this application, or we can test this functionality.
Right on that. So you got the pretty much you got it right. Now I'll tell you guys the difference, right? So when you write the test scenario, is just okay, how many possible ways somebody can interact with that piece of functionality, right? As you said. But test cases is the end product. All this work that we did is to develop a test case. What is the reason we create a test case? Is because maybe later we have to run the same test. We have to do the same test. So we can just use the test case to run it again, right? So test case allows us to reuse the document, right? Test case allows us to go and re-execute test without having to do all this again. Which means is that test cases are the test script are the end product after doing requirement study, planning, and test scenario creation. Okay, so now your test case should contain enough information so that you don't have to go back to test scenario or your requirement. You understand? So that means test case is a step-by-step process on how to do the testing. Yes. So we're going to write steps. Go to this URL. Write username this. Write the password this. So username and password here is test data. We're including username. We're including the password. Then what should be the outcome? Expected result. And what should be the actual result if you're executing the test? And then if you have additional information like comments, so if the step is very messy, maybe the step is more confusing, then you write comments to describe, like, okay, in these steps, make sure you have this database going and you have this application going and so on. So you can write this information. The idea is that when we write test cases as a manual tester, is that we document these test cases somewhere. So that way, whenever we need to go back and execute, we want to execute, right? Let's go back to the test execution, right? Just to explain better. Test execution is basically when you, for a manual tester, so when you're doing manual test cases, let me give you a visual. Maybe that's going to help, right? So let's talk about test case steps, right? Step description. And this is, let's say, think about a very small test case here. Expected result, actual result, screenshot, and then comment, right? So think about, this is your test cases. In the first step, I said, let's say, like, I'm not going to write it because it's going to take some time. So let's just, since we're here already, in the first step, I said, go to udemy.com, my courses and learning, right? This is the URL. So let's say, go to this. That's the first step, number one. Go to this, right? That's my first step. Okay, this falls under test description. Then the expected result for that would be, what is the expected result? Who wants to tell me? You're seeing it right here. So what is the expected result?
Seeing the website.
Requirement of the product.
When you say see in the website, that is very big description. You know what I'm saying? Like vague. How do I say this? But that means you're saying anything. Like so when can you say that it is not meeting our expectation? So this is the expected result, right? If you say seeing the website, then it meets our expectation almost 100%, no matter what happened to the application. It could be all scrambled.
Oh.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to look for to say, okay, if I see this, that means it's good.
A Udemy logo?
Udemy logo shows regardless of going into my courses or not, right? So that is something that you shouldn't check, right? We're testing for my courses and my learning, right? So that's where we go in first thing. Your expected result should be, if you're in my course and my learning, you want to see the courses that you have purchased is displaying correctly or not. So your test data should be, this user should already have some courses in their list, so that way you can test it. That's your test data. Expected results should be like all the list of courses belongs to the user should display. Okay. Sometime you want to be more descriptive, so you know which list. So you can write the list here, list of courses that you should see. So you can write, you can basically now provide all the list here, right? Let's say 4, because you want to be more descriptive. You want to know exactly when it fails, right? So that's your expected result. Then we got actual. When can I write actual result? Somebody tell me that. Should I write it right now? Because I'm developing the test case. Should I write it right now?
On the time of the execution.
Exactly. When you execute, only then. Actual result remains blank until you're executing, because that's when you're testing, right? You don't want to execute right now. You're just developing the test case. And then we got screenshot. You can take the screenshot from the design team and put it like, this is how it should look like, and so and so. Comment, you can write additional comment, for example. So now this test case, you tell me, somebody from the street tomorrow, I go to Manhattan and pick somebody who's a tourist, maybe he's visiting from France or something. I pick this guy up, I put him in my desk, and I said, okay, go ahead. This is the test case. I want you to execute. You tell me, can you execute this? Just simply yes or no, right? Can he or can he not?
Yes.
He can.
Yes, you can.
I think he can, right? Because we're listing the courses that he should see. We're giving him exact URL. So I think he can, right? So your test case, just so you know, your test case should be as descriptive as possible to say that in the future, if somebody needs to execute, because you're not the only person who's going to be working in the company, your coworkers are going to be there and they will be executing test cases if they need to. So that means when you write your test case, it should be enough descriptive for them to execute without having to go to you and ask you a question. Imagine like you wrote 1,000 test cases and now everybody's looking for you. Hey, I have a question. You wrote this. Can you tell me what is? Then what was the point of writing the test cases? You could have just give them test scenarios. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Test scenario is like you're describing what you're going to do and what you are expecting. Okay, that's how the test case is. Test scenario is. So for example, test scenario for this one should be a user goes to my courses and my learning, and they should see list of their course that they have purchased. That is the test scenario. We wrote the test cases just like this. Okay, so now you could have easily give them test scenario if they have to come back and ask you a question. So when we write our test cases, we want to make sure that somebody else is going to be executing, not you. If you keep that in mind, you're going to be writing good test cases. Let's just put it this way. Execution happens after the code delivery. What can you do before code is delivered? For example, this page didn't exist, right? Just now it's blank, right? So you cannot test it, but at least you can do up to this much, right? Up to this much you can do. And then when the page is ready to be executed, you ask the developer and say, hey, is your code ready to be tested? And they say yes. Then you can do your execution and say this test case passes or fails. Okay, so you can write pass, fail, whatever. So I hope this gives you guys a pretty good idea about you as a tester. You have to be a tester at heart before you do any sort of automation, right? It's very important, and it's coming from somebody who does automation for like last 8-9 years. Then we talk about the test script. People say, okay, automation is 100% automation possible? So you got test cases. What is your, like, sometimes you think, oh, as a manual tester, maybe I'm not as important as automation. Actually, you're more important than the automation guys. It's because you are SME, number one. Number two is that you find the most bug because you're testing immediately. And number three is that you have more interaction because you're developing the test cases. The automation guys, they take your test cases and they select what needs to be automated. They don't automate everything. They cannot automate everything, or rather, they should not automate everything. If we are automation person, right? And if somebody says, okay, I want 100% automation, maybe it's possible somehow. It's going to be a lot of effort, but should they automate everything? My professional advice is they should not, right? They should not automate 100%, because when you automate 100%, it's not like you created the script and it's now going to be on its own and is going to be running by itself. When you create the test automation and test script, it needs constant maintenance. Just like this application, somebody's maintaining weekly. This website that you're using, somebody's maintaining weekly, really. So the test script needs constant maintenance. So imagine like we automate every possible scenario. Who's going to maintain all these scenarios? Should we automate only the critical business flow that will immediately tell you the application is not healthy? Critical, something that is high priority. Or should we automate like even the smallest possible thing that creates more problem than giving you a good output? You know what I'm saying? You guys kind of feel what I'm trying to say here, because sometime when you go in an interview, they will tell you like, okay, it's 100% automation possible? You're going to say, well, in theory, if you spend time and energy, there is a possibility that 100% automation is possible. But should you be doing 100% automation? That's the question. Because if you do 100% automation in nitpicking every possible things, every combination of a test scenario, it creates a huge enough script that you would need bigger development team. You will need bigger people that write code to maintain it. Okay. So what can you do? What is the most you can make out of your script? What should you do? You should choose high priority and critical functionalities to automate that. For example, if something that is essential here should be automated, so that way you're testing and you immediately tell them, okay, look, this is not working. It doesn't add a lot of maintainability because the script is not huge, right? The more code you write, the more maintainability, work adds. So for example, like if you're still confused, think about this way. I automated absolutely everything here, right? I'm checking for text, I'm checking for this, I'm checking for the percentage, and everything at all, checking for the image through automation. Now a developer came and made the change. They made some changes and they said, okay, instead of showing the image here, we're going to be showing the image at the bottom. We're going to take the task, this text, and we're going to put it in the top of the image. This percentage should be on the side, and so on. So they redesigned the complete application. And now all of your test cases are failing at the same time. And let's say you have, because you automated 100%, you have close to 10,000-15,000 test cases. You will essentially end up with more code to test the application than having the code to actually deliver the application. You guys kind of understanding what I'm trying to say, right? So it is possible. While it is possible, but the simple answer is no. We shouldn't. It's very difficult to get 100% automation. But the question is, should we be doing 100% automation? Is this our target? We shouldn't. Like my professional advice is that we should not automate 100%, because that will add so much maintainability task and work, is that we're going to have constant test failures that will be masking the real bug. So you're going to miss the real bug because your application fails so many times, and you're going to say, this one fails. This area of the application fails because we have this test case and that test case. We need to redo this. Now what's going to happen is maybe there is a real bug that you're missing at this point, because you have so many failures, you cannot go through them every day. So you're going to miss the real thing just because you have so much noise. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Automation 100% is not possible. But even if in theory, in a perfect world, let's say it is possible, then we shouldn't, because that will create so much work. All right, then we got test execution. For automation, you execute nightly basis. You can execute nightly basis, weekly basis. You can execute also release basis. Before going to the release, you can execute. But the idea is that if you execute only a day before release, the problem is that if you find a lot of issues, then you don't have a lot of time to fix. So it's better you run it nightly basis, because you catch an issue, you report it, and they fix it, and it goes on for the entire 2 weeks. And then at the end of the time, when you are ready to release to production, your test is no longer failing because they fixed it. You fix the test, or they fix the application, depending on whether it's a bug or not a bug, right? So bug tracking login, what is a bug lifecycle, is pretty much also a interview question, right? They ask you, even if you are somebody with 10 or 15 years of experience, they still ask you what is the typical bug lifecycle is because it's a very good way to understand who you are as a person when it comes about QA and QA testing. Same thing as STLC, like what I'm trying to explain to you guys. Then we have UAT testing. UAT testing is what? UAT testing is basically user acceptance testing. So once you finish with your execution and you're satisfied as a tester and you feel like, you know, it worked, then you take your test cases, you hand them over to UAT guys and say, hey, here is a document that you can follow to do your testing. UAT tester is basically somebody who wrote the requirement in the first place, okay? Somebody who is also an SME and who wrote the requirement. So that makes them product owner or a business person, right? Business analyst. So either product owner or business analyst will say, I'm going to do the UAT. What the main intention here is that not to say, okay, the QA guys made a mistake, but they just want to see that the requirement is something that met their expectation, which is called user acceptance. They're accepting the new code or features that was done by developer. Okay. Now, what happens if UAT guys come back and say it's failed? There's two things can happen, right? If UAT guy says, I'm not satisfied, number one is that QA didn't do his job. Okay, because we already said it's good, right? We wrote the test case, we executed, and everything is good. That means you missed something. Maybe you're in a rush. Maybe like you forgot a test case. Maybe you forgot a test scenario. So it's kind of embarrassing, right? Because somehow you didn't do your job. That's your only job is to test. Yeah, you know, only job is to test, right? So you missed that. So it's pretty embarrassing, at least from my side. At least like for me, I will feel embarrassed. And now they're coming back to you and like, hey, I want to understand. They're not going to go back to a developer and say, hey, why is it failing? They're going to go directly to you and say, hey, I want to understand why this is failing. It's because they're naive. They're thinking like maybe they're doing something wrong themselves, right? Because they think you already tested and everything is good. So why would there be a failure? So they will think that it's maybe the environment is not right. Maybe the test data that you're using is not right. So they'll come to you and then you test it and you find it, oh yeah, it's failing. You know, what is your immediate reaction? You're going to say, well, hey, I think that's my miss. I totally overlooked, totally rushed it. So let me go ahead. Let me take this story back to me. I'm going to do more thorough testing and I'll get back to you. So you're taking right from that person right away, writing that bug and then following up with developer, get it fixed, and then come back to the same user testing guy, right? So UAT testing guy and say, hey, here, now we should be good. And that is called ownership. You're taking ownership of that specific story. Because why? Because you are the person who tested it. So just remember that you can do that, or they will file a bug and therefore they kind of like found the bug, right? And now the more bug they find, the more embarrassed you will be, right? If this is your miss, okay? Now, the other thing, that possible thing can happen is that the requirement is not complete. You tested only what was on requirement. Now the UAT guy, some of the requirement he had in his mind because he is an SME and he knows the application more better, at least the feature application more better, because he understands and he talks to the product team, or he is at the product team, right? So now he missed it. So they come to you and then they say, oh, how come this and that is not working as expected? You're going to say, well, this is not part of the requirement. Let's do one thing, create a new requirement and pass it on to the developer. But this story, as far as what I tested is meet the expectation. So let's do a new story for whatever you're asking for right now. So that is another route. Okay, that is not embarrassment on the QA side, but that is the embarrassment on the UAT side because they missed the requirement. They didn't put the requirement. So unfortunately, for us, we don't test anything beyond requirement. Okay, we only go in scope. We define the scope of testing in the very beginning when we do test planning, right? We define the scope, what we will be testing and what we will not be testing, which is pretty important. All right, so at this stage, obviously you're going to be doing bug logging and tracking, right? So UAT testing is done. And then we got the release to production. Release to production, you may think like, okay, I will take the day off that day because I don't have to do anything, because really you got nothing to do here, right? You may think like that. But now many companies, they release on the weekends or they release midnight. Because why? Number one reason is because they don't have too many users at midnight, so they will not be interrupted. And weekends, if it's like you're working for like investment banking, like for example, shares, right? And stocks, buy and sell. Weekends, they don't buy and sell. Off hours, they don't buy and sell. So therefore you cannot possibly mess their orders, or you cannot really mess up their workflow. So they will do it at that time. They will ask you, are you available at the time? You should always say yes. If you have a plan, you should cancel that plan, because number one thing is that you tested the whole application. If you're not in the release time, if you're not, by the way, you get paid for it, so you'll get overtime. If it's weekend or whatever, you get more money. But if you're a full-time employee or direct with the company, then they will compensate you. They will give you a day off because you worked on the weekend. Okay, so they will give you extra day off, right? Your manager will say, okay, take the day off Monday, don't worry about it, right? So, but if you are a contractor, you get money, right? You basically say, okay, I worked extra hours. So think about this way: you have to be there, right? You're an SME, you have to be there. You're like an essential person who has to be in the release meeting. On the release meeting, everybody joins the meeting through virtual means, right? So on Skype or whatever, because you're working on the weekend, everybody joins the meeting. And as a QA, you don't really do anything until it's done, until the release is done. Okay, so release is done, and then all of a sudden your DevOps teams and looks for the QA, like, hey, where's Jewel? We just released it. We need a confirmation, because they will be standing by. Nobody's going home. Nobody is going to turn off their computer. Nobody's going to the beach on Saturday. They're going to be waiting for you until you finish your post-release validation. Nobody is going to nowhere, even your manager. Everybody's going to stand by, waiting patiently for you to finish the post-release validation. Now, what is post-release validation, you guys? Tell me. I've been explaining for way too long.
Post-release validation is something that we have been validating the application is been working as expected after the release.
Exactly. So after you release, what you do as a post-release validation is that you run some of the key test cases, some of the test cases that are very critical, but also some of the test cases that you created based for this release. So the requirement that you have, based on the requirement, you created some test cases. So you basically go and execute those test cases. But because you're in production, you have to be careful. Don't create new data, okay? But if you do create data, no matter what you do, every single steps, you're going to be writing it down. I did this, I did this, I did this. You're going to be writing it down. If you generate data under somebody's name, a customer's name or something, you want to write that down, so that way somebody can go and do the cleanup. Somebody from database team has to go and clean up that. But let's say like you work for Chase Bank, and their teller system you're testing after the release, and you, in order to see if you can deposit money, you deposit $1 million to somebody's account, a random account, and you forgot that person's account. Now that person end up getting that $1 million, because why? Because you're in production, right? So obviously that's not going to happen in production. What they do is that they give you a test account. So you should not use like a random person's account, right? You have to be careful. Like, you're in production, you can just potentially like give somebody money. If you're working for finance, if you worked in, let's say, insurance company, you can potentially cancel somebody's insurance. You know what I'm saying? So just be careful. Just know what you can or cannot do. It's okay to ask your manager, like, hey, this is production. I want to be as safe as I can. Let me know what I should and shouldn't do, because every company has a different procedure, right? from going from finance, you absolutely may or may not get production access in the first 6 months. So therefore, you will be part of the release, but you cannot do the validation, unfortunately. You will be there and you'll be guiding who? You'll be guiding the UAT guy, who actually is somebody who has the access. So you're going to be telling them, can you check this? Okay. You're going to be sharing screen with them and try to tell them what you want to check just before you can say, yes, QA thinks that the production went successful, everything looks good and done. Then everybody claps, right? Everybody that is waiting on the room, everybody claps and they say, okay, good job, everybody. Thank you so much. And then everybody goes on their way. And that's how production release takes place. I hope this whole story kind of makes sense, because you as a tester at heart, you should know this story as much as you can. All right. So any question?
So Bhaiya, can we call it regression testing?
Yeah, it's kind of like regression, because you're choosing some critical business flow, no? What is a regression testing in the first place, right? Regression testing is you are testing the application in order to see whether the new added functionality or new feature that is added to the application not breaking existing features of application. So yes, you can call that as a regression testing, but not everything you will be running, because it's production. You need to give them an okay after 20-30 minutes, right? After the production release is done, right? So you cannot go and run all the test cases, but you will do relevant test cases, but you will still test your critical business flows. So that way you are confident that the application has no problem. So that is regression, but it might be a light regression. So every company is different. Some companies you can do full regression, some company you cannot do full regression. So for example, like I worked for finance companies where I cannot do full regression. I also worked in companies where it's a faculty and student type of thing, right? Like it's like a digital it's like a Blackboard. You know what Blackboard is if you went to CUNY. So testing that application, I can do full regression because it's really not affecting anybody in production, because I can create my own school, own faculty, and own students. So the only thing I'm doing is I'm making these changes in my own bubble, even if I'm in production. So I can do full regression without having to impact anybody, any school, like for example, City Tech, LaGuardia, like these schools, they will have their own sites, right? Own databases and so and so. So we don't really impact them, because I will create our own in production and we'll say test university, for example. So that type of application where you can kind of create your own users, own group, and so and so, and that doesn't affect anything on the production, then you can do full regression. Otherwise, you are not going to be doing a full regression. But either way, you're not going to make that decision. You're going to ask that question to UAT guy or your manager. QA manager will reach out to whoever to give you a good direction in terms of what you can test in production. But that is effectively, yes, you can call it a regression. If you know the definition, obviously, like what I'm explaining, this is definitely a regression right here, right? But it depends with the team and the company, or what kind of company you work for. It'll be a full regression, it'll be partial regression. All right, so any other question before we move forward here with this? This is like, look, this is all you do. This is you as a tester. Everything else that I'm going to show you with automation, it's to help you write test script. That is to help you become more efficient. That is to help you do the testing faster. That is to help you find bugs in the future with test execution that will be automated, meaning you click a button, it will do it for you, versus test cases, you'll have to do it yourself. Okay. So this is just a tool to help you, nothing else. Everything else still applies to you if you are a QA engineer versus QA analyst. Okay. This is where the difference takes place. But all of you guys that are here, your profile is going to be like this. You do 40% manual testing and 60% automation, depending on the job and responsibility. If the job requires you to do only manual testing, then you're going to say, I do 20% automation and 80% manual testing to kind of give them a sense that you're good with manual testing, but you still know some automation, so you can help them in the future if they have automation. Now, if the company is saying, okay, we're going to need somebody with Selenium experience, then you're going to say, look, I do 60% automation using Selenium and then 40% manual testing, because in my team, not everything can be automated due to the complexity of the application, right? And pretty much that's how we're going to be going, depending on who you're talking to, depending on what companies you're trying to apply, depending on what jobs you're targeting. Each time you're going to tell a story to somebody, one of the recruiter, you're going to know that the job description, you're going to have to ask them for job description, look at the job description and see what is relevant for you to say. Okay, what do you want to say, what do you not want to say? You don't want to go to a manual testing job and say, I know 80%, I do 80% automation and 20% manual. Then they're going to say, wait a minute, this person is more interested in automation, he's going to come into the team and he's going to then leave because he found a job with automation. So you don't want to give them that impression. You want to basically work on case-by-case situation. You got a job description, you look at it and see what they want, and then based on that you have to make your judgment and say, look, this is what I do. Now that doesn't mean that you don't know automation, you're just changing the percentage in order to signify what they need, okay, in order to kind of tell them that yes, I will be able to do automation. So in theory, if you're an automation tester, then you are a really good manual tester as well, because you cannot be a good automation tester without being a good manual tester. Because think about this way, you're automating the test cases, so up to this much you have to be really good at, right? If you are a manual tester and you do this much really good, that means your 90% work is done. All is left is the test execution. So either way, you cannot be a good automation person without being a good manual tester. So just keep that in your mind in order for you to be really good QA person. So now, what is the question? You guys have any questions from Shantabai's class? Because today's like I'm covering for him, right? My class is going to be tomorrow for automation. So if I have to just review something from his side, I will, because you'll hear from my perspective compared to his. He's more on the agenda. He pretty much follows the agenda and the syllabus that we have, and I try to go off of the syllabus because I care more about what you know. I care more about what you should know, right? So is there any question from the last classes that you feel like you need clarifications here? So everybody's clear. Okay, so let me ask you guys questions now. I'm going to choose a person instead of you. Okay. So let's ask who? Let's see. Who should I ask? All right, so let's start with Tarana, right? You explained to me, let's say I hired you, I'm a QA manager, okay? But I became a QA manager after becoming a developer, right? So I have really zero idea about testing. I don't know much about testing. So I'm a QA manager, I hired you, and I'm asking you a question. Hey, give me an idea about what will you do when I give you a requirement or user story? What are the steps that you'll follow to do the testing? And that is for my own satisfaction. I just want to know if you are, you know exactly what you need to do in order to do this work. So I give you a user story. User story is pretty much a requirement, right? And what is the requirement? You guys already know, right? It's pretty much telling you what the application should be, what is the feature should be of the application. So now, Tarana, my question to you is, and again, these are the pointers, right? You can use this, right? But you have to explain. You cannot just simply say, I will do first a study, then study requirement, then I'll do planning, then I'll do this. I want you to explain to me what will you do and why for every single phases. Okay. So the question is, what will you do to finish your testing? I get your requirement today. What are the steps that you'll need to finish the testing? Okay, you got 2 more seconds, and then I'm going to move on to somebody else. All right. So if you don't want to, just say like, I'm sorry, I'm not too confident to answer that question. So just go ahead and pass it over to somebody else.
Sorry, drilled by somebody else.
Okay, no problem. So like I said, this, like my class, I try to be as interactive because it's better, right? Because
yeah, of course.
When you take the interviews, it's not going to be silent, right? They want to know who you are. All right, so let's go to Syed. You're next. You got 5 seconds to say yes or no, and then we move on. Can you answer that question?
I'm not sure about the answer to that.
All right. Rana, you're next.
The very first step would be to requirement study, right? This is where I will try to understand what the end user is actually asking for. If I don't understand something, I will reach out to the business analyst, ask them, and then get a clarification on it. Based on the requirement, I will try to write the test case. Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. Little.
Follow the pointers, right? I'm helping you here, right? It's not like I'm just asking out of blue.
Yeah. Sorry, test plan. So based on the requirement, first thing first, I will write the test plan, right? And then once the test plan is good, I will come up with the test scenarios, and then write the test cases.
Yeah, but explain to me, right? Like, okay, so when you write the test scenarios, like, what do you care about? What should be in it, or at least how would you write the test scenarios? And then test case, same thing. Explain to me. Test planning, you can also explain. And then
so test plan is a document describing the scope of the test, the approach that I will take to do the test, the resource that I will need for the test, the schedule, and then the intended testing that I will be doing. It identifies the item that I'm going to test, the features that needs to be tested, the task, and then who will do each task. Is there any risk involved with the test? And then what's the solution for it?
Okay.
As far as the test script, it's basically I'll come up with.
You're missing a scenario, no? Like you're saying.
Sorry, scenario. So I'll come up with the different testing scenarios, or I'll come up with a different. I can't find the word I'm looking for.
So you'll think like an end user and see what are the flows, what are the business flows, what are the critical flows that you need to cover. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
And then I will write the test case. Basically, it will describe the step-by-step on how to execute the test. It will include the case ID, the description, the expected output, the actual output, whether it passes the test or to fail the test, and then remarks if there's anything that needs to be explained. And then the next step would be text execution. After that, I will do the bug logging. If there's any bug, I will have to log it and then send it back to the developer so that they can fix it and then send it back to me. And then I would do the testing again. Once all the bugs are, I guess, cleared, we will do the UAT testing to make sure that from an end user perspective is ready for users. Once that's cleared out, we're going to release the production.
All right. So, all right. And UAT testing, like, what do you do as a tester? Like you're missing, like I said, explain, right? As a UAT, like on the UAT side, what do you be doing? Like somebody else is testing for you, right? But what you do in that time? So
I basically play around with the end product from an user's perspective.
No, but like, let's say you did up to 6, right? 6 is done, bug login tracking done, everything is satisfied. So you moved on and you passed from your side, and now UAT testers are testing. What can you do to help them?
Well, again, I'm going to use the product to make sure that it is as it's supposed to be according to the requirements. If it's not,
you already did that. No, you already did that, because you remember, if you wrote the test scenarios very well, that means you already covered like close to 100% in terms of test scenarios and test cases. That means you already tested it. It's done. Okay, and you executed it. Everything passes. If there was any bug, then you log and track until it's finished, and you re-execute it, which is called retesting. And once the retesting is done, you're satisfied. At that point, you're done. You're handing off to the UAT testers, right? There's nothing else for you to do, right? For that feature, at least for that requirement is done, right? So what do you do? What can you do if you were to help them?
I am not sure, to be honest. I would say manual testing to see.
So let's say I'm the UAT tester. I am a business person. This, even though I describe how I want it, I may not know where the application, how to even, where to go, the test data, login information. I don't have any of these. You
I
as
guess
a
we can send
user
out
guy, you're gonna
descriptions.
say, hey, if you want to follow, here's a test case. It already has the user name, user password, and everything. You can use it to do your testing. And if you have any question, you reach back to me. They don't go to the developer. They shouldn't go to the developer, okay? They should not bypass you. You are the next immediate person after it goes to UAT testing. So now they come back to you, back and forth, you answer question because you are the last person testing it. So therefore, you know the answers to their questions. And back and forth, and they're satisfied, then it goes to release production. Now back and forth, they're not satisfied, and then you realize that was your mistake, then it goes back to the developer to fix it. But back and forth, and let's say they're not satisfied, but you are satisfied, then you have to come up with an agreement with them and say, look, I understand you're not satisfied, but whatever requirement said, I did it. So why don't you create a new one? Right? Why don't you create a new requirement and pass this one for this time? Right? So two possible scenarios that will happen that you can actually, but everything will be about communication and try to help the team and not only like handing off, right? You'll be SME, right? So you'll be helping not only the UAT guys, but you'll also help other people who needs help. You'll see all of a sudden somebody from customer service team reaching out and say, hey, we have this unique situation, this error, can you investigate? That's called production issue, right? That is production issues and production bugs, and they don't know how to reproduce, or they don't know how to, they want you to investigate. So you will be investigating that if they want you to do that. So there is a lot more that is involved just aside from these steps, but these steps are you as a QA tester, what you need to do, but everything else will come based on the company standard, company situations, what they want you to do, what can you do to help them, you know, communication wise or anything else, right? It'll be part of the job. But again, this is the core. This is the core of your responsibility, right? So that means that what that means. That means you have to know definition for each one of these, right? You have to know what test planning is. You have to know what test scenario is. You have to know what test cases is. You have to know what test script is. When you execute, what you should do. When you log a bug, you need to know the whole bug lifecycle, right? And you have to know what you can do with UAT and so and so, right? So if you do know this, that means you effectively, you can be confident and say that I know manual testing very, very well. And you can be more confident because now if somebody says like, wait a minute, after test planning, it should be review meeting. It should be like, let's say, it should be like third step, it should be test plan review, right? Review or test scenario, same thing. They can say, okay, wait a minute, after this, it should be test scenario review, right? And it needs approval, right, before moving to the next phase. Test case, same thing. If they can say review, UAT, they can say review. So the thing is that these, we assume that we don't include it here. If they require a review, you will do a review. It's nothing really crazy. You just take your test scenario and you read it out to them, or you talk to them and say, hey, is there anything missing? Do you think I missed anything at all? Can you review it? They come back to you with some suggestions. They will say, okay, you're missing scenario number this and this. Can you add them? And you'll add them, and then it's done, right? So that's why the reason why we don't add these additional steps is because that is really not the stages. The review and things is just to make you more efficient with what you did, to make sure that you covered 100%, and not only just you, but also second set of eye looked into it. So that way you don't take the blame yourself. So let's say somebody reviewed, your manager reviewed, and they said you're good, and testing was done, everything passes, release, and the release happened. After the release, there is an issue, and it's a big issue. For example, you work for Bank of America. After production release, if somebody deposit $1, they get $2 in their account. Similarly, let's say $1,000, they get $2,000. And now people quickly realize this is happening before the development team even found out. People are constantly depositing money and doubling their money. Think about how much money is being lost. Now they want to They want to know what is the root cause. They want to know what really happened. Maybe within 2 hours, they lost $1 billion because people deposited, even without knowing. They don't know the situation, but people are depositing constantly every day. So now they lost $2 billion. They want to know what really happened. And now they will then say, wait a minute, who wrote the test cases? You did, right? Then you're going to say, well, I wrote the test cases, but I also had my manager review my test scenario to make sure that if I'm covering everything. I did wanted the second set of eye to look into it. So now guess what? When I fire you, they have to fire the manager too. But just know one thing is that, like in this case, they cannot persecute. You're the part of the company, right? You're an employee, so it's not intentional. You're not trying to give money to people, right? Unless you intentionally go in, take some money, and then giving it to like your like let's say relative or something, your friend, give them $1 million in their account after logging into production. So that will be a criminal charge, right? That is like you're stealing money, same as stealing money. But here in this case, it's a software bug. It has nothing to do with like your intention or not intention. Everybody was involved. Developer wrote that, you wrote the scenarios, and then your manager reviewed it. They didn't find no issues. So why would you be fired? Why would you be like prosecuted if there's anything? So just so you know, that's pretty much covering your track. Okay, covering your back pretty much. All right. Who wants to explain to me again? Like, look, every time I hear somebody explain this whole process, it's like music to my ears, because it tells me that you are pretty much, you understand the entire process of testing, right? So let me choose another person. Fabio, you're next. Explain to me what you will do if I'm your QA manager giving you a user story, and I want you to explain to me what you will do from end to end, beginning to end, in order to say I'm done testing.
You mean from the study requirement all the way to post-release validation, right?
You tell me, because like I don't care. It doesn't matter what I mean right now, because like you as a tester, right? We already spoke. You as a tester, what steps that you will follow, why you will follow that, to finish testing that requirement or the user story. When can you say it's done? Tell me what do you understand after all this conversation?
What I understand is that first we gotta be in the
So
meeting and
like you're in an interview, you're telling me that what you will do. Okay, don't tell me like, okay, talk to me like you're in an interview right now.
Okay, first we went to the study requirement and we analyzed about the product.
Say I will analyze, not we. We don't like
sorry.
the interview is happening for you, right? I want to see if I can hire you, not you and your team. So let's start using I.
Okay. So first I went to the meeting, study about the product of the owner, and then I started.
Like you basically study the requirement, and if you have questions, then you go to the product owner. Yeah.
Okay. And then I started doing the test planning just from the meeting. Oh man, this is
right. That's fine. Look, like I said, if you're making mistakes, if you feel like you're short on answering that question, that is totally fine, because now it tells me that, okay, now you have to kind of spend some time with this. The thing is that, look, as long as you can explain the whole thing, it kind of gives me like a good understanding that you understood the entire flow of testing, because that is you, like, think about that this way, right? You going to a like, let's say Cold Stone, like ice cream shop, right? Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows what Cold Stone is. And you ask them, hey, I would like, for example, let's say strawberry cheesecake ice cream. And that guy has zero idea about the process. First, he has to wash his spatula, whatever he's using it, and then he has to scoop out some ice cream, and then you have to mix them together. Think about the process that he had to learn on his first couple of weeks, right? And that's the process that he follows. Everything has its steps and process. Everything, even if you don't have everything in documented, but everything has a steps and process. So in an interview, when they said, hey, look, tell us what will you do? What are the steps that you'll follow in order to say you're done testing? That question comes more often in an interview, but if you can explain that, the whole interview will be as friendly as it can be, because after that point, they already liked you. They already liked you. Now they're just gonna ask questions based on like, oh, so what do you do this and what do you do that one, and very much like the interview goes more friendly. There are two questions that I feel like determines whether your interview will be hard or not. One question is, tell me about yourself. And if you are able to tell them about yourself so good way, like such a nice and efficient way, that the remaining of your interview becomes smooth and nice, right? And you also gain some confidence, right? Okay, wait a minute, I feel welcomed to say this, or I feel friendly environment and things like that. And the second question is this, because the reason why I put this as the second question is because your only job is to do the testing. Imagine like they ask you a question, what is a test scenario? Now, because you're explaining the whole situation as a whole, you know what is a test plan, you know what is a test scenario, you know what is a test case, is part of the whole story that you're telling me, right? So that's essentially a lot of questions that you're answering with just a single story that I asked you guys to tell me. Okay, now I'm gonna ask somebody who's kind of should be able to do that. Hassan, I'll give you a chance to answer this question.
All right, after I get my requirement story, first I'll study it and try to understand the business workflow of the functionality.
Let me stop you for a second. In an interview, right, you're going to see me always asking you to do one thing, which is I want you to do slowly and clearly. Like everything that you're going to say in an interview, I want you to say it very slowly and clearly, because the way that you're going, not everybody was going to catch your information. So then you might have to repeat it. So why not just start slow and go clearly, so that way everybody understands your answer. So let's start over. Just keep in mind slow and clear.
Sure. After I get my user story, first I will ensure that I can understand the business workflow or the requirement or user story workflow, what exactly they want. If I get the clear understanding, then it's okay. If I do not get the clear understanding, then I'll contact with the responsible person, such as product owner or business analyst, to get clarify myself about the functionality of the user story. Then I will plan, I'll do the test planning, like how do we test and what are the different way to test. Then I will go for the test scenario. I'll write the test scenario. What are the different way that we can test this user story? Then I will switch to test cases. I write the test cases. I put the unit number for the every test case, and I will write the functionality and expected behavior of the test case. Then when the code is ready, or on that time, I'll start the execution. On the time of execution, I'll write the actual test result. And if there is anything unexpected or what is not in according to the requirement, I will write the bug for it, or I'll log the bug for it. Then I'll track the bug when the bug is being cleared, or the bug has been fixed. I'll retest the bug. And when I feel like all the exit criteria has been fulfilled on that time, I'll put it on the UAT testing with my test document. What we have, when the UAT testing done, we put it on the release. And after the release, we have to do the post-release test, where we have been confirmed that in the production environment, it has been working as expected, in according to the user story, or in according to the requirements.
Okay, perfect. That is a perfect answer. Now, if I am a manager right now and I have the position open, I would now ask you all the friendly questions, right? Because now I'm already liking what you're saying, right? so in an interview, like throughout the years that we've been part of the interviews, we took interviews. One thing I realized is that people treat you very differently depending on these answers that you provide. Tell me about yourself, or even this. Now, if I ask you the same question, if I ask you another question, tell me your day to day. What do you do daily basis? Like, you work in a agile team. What do you do daily basis? Are you going to be wrong if you answer the same questions? No, you're not going to be wrong. You know what I'm saying? This question could be answered in any way you can. Like, even if they don't ask you a question about STLC, I want you to say it. I want you to say, I'm an expert on testing, and this is what I do for testing. So let's say they didn't ask you this STLC question. They didn't ask you what will you do. They didn't ask you anything regarding testing. They just went all the way to Selenium and things like that. And at the end, they say, hey, do you have any question for us? Then you do ask them. So tell me about the responsibility that is not on the job description. I have read it and I feel like I'm comfortable with it. Can you tell me something else, other than that? So then they talk to you and they tell you like, okay, you have to communicate and you have to do this and you have to do that. And after the answer, your response should be, thank you so much for this, extra description of this job, and I feel like I am able to fulfill the job responsibilities, but also I feel like there is a lot of learning opportunity in your team. So I am very excited about learning, and I will be looking forward to hear a positive note from you, right? Then you're going to say, just to add to what we spoke earlier, just to add to what we spoke about testing as a core, is that, when I do testing on a user story, I usually make sure that I understand the requirement very well. Once I do understand the requirement very well, or maybe I don't, then I will go and reach out to appropriate person. I will reach out to the business or product team to make sure that I have a clear understanding before moving forward, because if I'm writing test plan or test scenario, I will need to understand the product and the feature. After that, I will start writing my planning. In the planning, I want to make sure that I have everything I need in order to move into scenario. But keep in mind, guys, planning may be out of the equation when you are doing agile testing, right? If you're an agile team. So that's why I'm not going to even explain planning here. So I'm going to write my scenarios. I want to make sure that I will be writing my scenario in every possible way the user will be interacting with that feature or functionality. So I will think like a user, I will think like a tester, and I will think like a developer to come up with my test scenario. After that, I will write my test cases. Test cases I'm going to be writing in a way that anybody can execute from my team, or somebody outside of the team can come and execute. And that's the way that I will write my test cases. Once I execute and I find bug, I will pretty much follow the entire bug lifecycle. I will assign that bug to the developer. When the bug is fixed, I will retest it and then confirm that it's working now, and then close that bug. If it's not fixed, I will send it back to developer for that fix. After that, I will work with the UAT team to make sure that they can continue doing their UAT testing. I will provide them with documentation, test data, and environment, whatever they need at that point. I'll also communicate with them to make sure that if any questions they have, I can answer. After that, if there is a release, I will do. Pretty much, I will be on the release. I'll make sure that I'm available on the release, and then I will do post-release validation to make sure the application is healthy and we have a successful release. So think about this way, right? This answer does not have to be tell me what you will do, right? This answer does not have to be, oh, what is the STLC? This answer does not have to be that. You can break down the answer too, but as I use this answer, for example, think about this way. In an interview, whatever you're good at, no matter what question they ask, I want you to find a way to answer, find a way to say what you're good at. Keep them focus on things that you're good at, not on something that you completely have no idea, right? So if they are asking a question, somehow you want to use some keywords that will trigger them to say, wait, okay, tell me what is STLC? Like you want to guide them to those questions that you're really, really, really good at. Now, in order to be on that situation, I want you to be good at something at least, right? So that way you can actually guide them. Otherwise, no matter where you guide them, they're still going to be asking questions that you have no idea about. But this is something that is so important, is that what I want each of you guys to understand is that you know how to tell this story, like I did, like Hassan did, and few other tried, right? At least take this. We're going to share this video at the end. Take this and to come up with this story, because I'm going to be asking over and over. Even in my automation class, I will be asking this question because this is so important. Number one is that you have clear understanding, you as a tester, what you need to do. Number two is that you can explain any of these steps and phases. These are the STLC phases we talk about, right? And you can explain each and every single one of them. And number three is that you can actually impress somebody by saying like you're a testing expert and these are some things that you actually followed, regardless of the situations, regardless of what other people is doing at work. But you make sure that you do this because that makes you more efficient as a tester, right? You have a process in place, and it's safe to say this is an engineering process. STLC is an engineering process that we follow in order to be efficient at what we do, what work we do. Because if you don't follow these steps, you can still do the testing. Can you not? Tell me. You don't have to follow this step. You can still do the testing. Like, you don't have to study requirement. You just go into the application and start looking. Oh, okay, my learning, and I can see that this stuff showing up. Okay, everything is good. But can you be efficient though? Can you say I'm 100% done? Can you say like, I am almost certain that there is no bug, right? When you going into a real team and work in a real team, one thing you'll struggle to see is that you cannot find bug because everything looks good to you. The only way you will find bug if you stick to the paper, if you stick to the documents, if you study the requirement, you'll find bugs. If you do not study the requirement, everything will look good to you. And I'm guaranteeing you that. You're going to be like, oh, wow, the developers are so good. They don't even have a chance to provide some bugs, right? Like you would probably like, you'll be thirsty for bugs, like, oh, I'm going to find bugs. And you can't because you didn't study the requirement, for example. But as soon as it goes to UAT, they find bugs. And then you're going to be like, what did I miss? What did I miss? So it's okay for you to be following this process, because this way you will do the right thing, regardless of your mode, how you feel for that day, and how you are. You may be sick, you may be feeling down, you may have some issues at home, but as long as you follow the steps, you cannot go wrong. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place. You will be pretty much, yes, and don't get me wrong, if you're going out there. Okay, so another question, right? If I'm here, right, and I'm testing randomly, like click, everything is working, what kind of test that is?
Manual.
How is that? Seriously, like this is manual testing, no? Like when you create the test cases. So what is this testing that I'm doing
Smoke testing.
without following any of these steps?
Smoke testing.
No. What else?
Functional?
What is?
Functional?
You said what?
Functional, maybe?
Functional. How is it functional? If I'm looking at if I'm going and I'm making sure that these things are right into the right places, that is also non-functional, no? Right? It's a design situation going on, but also functional included. But what type of testing? Remember, we have
Automation testing.
So you're calling me a robot if I'm doing this myself, like this, click here and there. Automation is something that done by without human interaction, but I am a human. Does it make an automation?
Do you mind if you can random guess?
Yeah, go for it. Like if you keep guessing, I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Black box testing?
Yes, that is black box testing, but I wouldn't entirely say it's black box testing. Black box testing is when you don't look at the code, okay? You don't look at the code. So the application code that the developer has built and send it out to, and you'll see the code, right? Because the PR goes in, pull request goes in, so you'll see the code somewhere. We don't look at the code. We just go and randomly go and testing. That is black box testing, right? White box testing is when you look at the code and predict what the application should do, what the feature should do. That is white box testing. Now, this is whatever I'm doing. This is combination of exploratory and black box testing, because I'm not looking at the code and I am not following any of these test cases or anything. Exploratory testing is basically when you go in and your number one motive is that you want to find bugs. By all means, by all means, you go into do whatever you need to do. There is no document saying, okay, you go into this. You just click, go into a different page and just continue, use the application exhaustively to find issues. That is exploratory. You're exploring the application. You're basically touching things that you may not touch if you follow the test cases, right? So you're just going in and it's like, okay, let me click. You know what? There's a Netflix. If I click on it, nothing happens. Is this something that should happen? Yes, right? Because you shouldn't be in Netflix right now if you click on it. This is just a business. What the business they do with business, right? It's not a link or nothing. So it should be fine. We got Volkswagen. If I click on this and I can change language, then it should do that, right? And you continue to go and use your judgment. There is no expected result, but you use your judgment based on the application and the product and your testing expertise throughout the years to find issues. That is exploratory testing. Now I will tell you, I'm going to add a new step right here. Once you executed your test cases, right, and you are going to say you will do also, that's going to be another, like I will just give it a point here. You're going to do exploratory exploratory. Oh goodness, did I got it wrong? Okay, there you go. Exploratory testing. Oh, expiatory, no, okay. Exploratory testing is, again, you're exploring. You're like pretty much you're like a pirate going with the boat and try to find somebody to pretty much invade somebody's boat. But in this case, we're looking for bugs, right? Now, if I say you do an exploratory testing and you have a time frame for exploratory testing, and you can say like, as soon as you're done with testing, you didn't find any issues, you didn't find any bugs, and you give yourself a 30 minutes time of, because exploratory test, sorry, exploratory testing you can do for hours if you need to, if you want to, but you say you will do a 30 minutes exploratory testing after your test case is executed to find additional bugs, edge cases, bugs that may not found by following the test cases, and that is fine. That's an additional steps. And actually, throughout the whole career of mine, I did this every time after I finished testing, every time, because sometimes I do find bugs. What I don't want is that this guy's going and like, oh yeah, I was looking into the other side and I see that it's broken, right? Even though like your regression should help find the issue, but exploratory testing doesn't. It can be immediate. Before you even pass the story, you can say, hey, because of your story or because of your requirement, I have another bug. And you can say this is a relevant bug to these new changes and they will fix it. But that bug can be also caught by your regression or may not catch by regression, because exploratory testing is completely different, which means you're going out of your way to look for new issues. So just keep that in mind. This is a good practice. This is something that you should do at the end of execution to find additional issues and bugs. And you may say like, oh, I just want to finish testing. Why should I even do this? Remember, once it goes for release and things happens, you're going to quickly find yourself in a, if you're on site, you're going to find yourself in a conference room explaining what happened. If you're not in office, you're going to be writing a huge letter, emails to explain what really happened. You don't want to do that, right? And the other thing is that when we take an assignment, when we take a user story, we always overestimate, right? Meaning, like if this test case will take, like think about this way, this test case will take maybe like an hour at max. This small test case, for example, and an hour is still too much, right, time. But we're gonna say this is gonna take a day. It's okay. What you want to do is that you want to take that day and you use it efficiently, so that way nobody comes and point fingers and say, look, you forgot this, right? So as a tester, it's okay to take extra time. It's okay to ask for extra time. It's okay to overestimate, but it's not okay to give people half-baked item. You don't want to rush yourself and finish something and say, hey, I'm done. And you're showing everybody that you're so fast, you do everything fast. The problem with that is, if something happens, nobody's going to back you up. Like, okay, so how come you didn't spend a little bit more time? It's okay, take some more time. The thing is that nobody who tests the tester, nobody, right? But UAT guys, they may miss it too, because they are just looking to see whether it's working or not. They don't care about edge cases. They don't care about other bugs. in the other side. They're not looking for bugs. They're just trying to see if they can accept the requirement or not. But when it goes to production and it creates a big problem, you are the one who they're going to come back to, not the UAT guy, right? So it's okay to take extra time. Just take it easy. You know, what you need to do is that you need to take more time to do the testing. If you didn't find a bug, test it again. If you didn't find a bug, do 30 minutes exploratory testing. If you still didn't find a bug, then read the requirement one more time to make sure that you're following, and then only say, okay, I'm pretty confident. I am confident as a tester, and now I will go ahead and say it's done. What that makes you do is that you become, at that point, if you are that nitpicky, you are picking everything, you are basically becoming very critical as a tester. That separates you from somebody from the street. That will make you into a professional who is saying that, okay, you don't want to let go even a simple word in this page. For example, S shouldn't be uppercase, for example, let's say, right? And you see S uppercase and you're not letting it go. No, it should be changed. And you raise that as a bug. Yes, that's the type of behavior that we want. We want somebody who has a very detailed mind. We want somebody who's very critical. We want somebody who doesn't get intimidated by the developer. They're coming to you, hey, are you done? I'm waiting for this. Are you done with the testing so I can move on? No, I'm not done. I'm going to take another day. This is very critical. I need to make sure that is, I feel, confident before I move on, right? So this is the thing. As a tester, sooner or later, if you are not that type of, if you're not patient and you don't have a mindset of a tester, that will come over time, right? You will grow that passion on your third, fourth, or fifth year, right? But if you can grow it right now, it will help you get a job sooner, and it will separate you from the people from the street. Somebody who's, let's say, working as a cab driver, somebody who's working as like accountant, somebody who's working, actually accountants makes a good tester, by the way. They usually like very critical, so which is good. But you need to make sure that, look, there is no reason for you to rush. There is no reason for you to jump and running and say, look, I'm done. Give me the next assignment. No. Take your time. You are at this point somebody who's a QA. You can think that you are an inspector, okay? Your job is to find issues. If you don't find issues, test it again until you find something. I guarantee you, if you're testing a requirement, you will find at least one issue. And it's because why? Let me tell you, because I was a developer for 6-7 months. And this is the thing, when we develop, when we write something, when we did something in the application, we updated it, right? We are focused on creating that feature. We're not focused on what we missed. We say, okay, you know what? Send it to the QA. They will come back with what has been missed. Okay. So you guys will do the testing and say, okay, you missed this and you missed that. This is a bug, this is a bug. And we go and fix it. That is actually easier and faster than me trying to figure out what I missed, right? So that's one reason. And number two reason is that sometime, let's say in a sprint, purposely I create a bug because maybe I feel like, oh man, I spent so much time with this feature and now they're going to give me another assignment. So let me just create some issues, like leave something out. The QA guys comes back, hey, I'm sorry, but this is the issue. Oh, okay. Go ahead and create a bug. You create a bug. Okay, go ahead and assign it to me. Assign it to me. And now in the meeting, I'm saying, okay, so let's say, for example, Hassan has found this bug and so I'm working on it. It'll take me a day or two. So sometimes it's to reduce some workload. Developers do that. Sometimes just because they get that additional help, because you are more detailed to find these different aspects. And so they will also just rush it to send their code and put it up there. And once you come back with your suggestion, your bugs, then they will fix those, right? So it's kind of like teamwork. It is teamwork, but don't assume like, okay, this developer is 100%, he's good and he's not gonna sleep out the bugs. Like we will pretty much, like they will say, oh man, I spent like last 2 nights, 24 hours of work. Because what the developers do is that it's kind of like it becomes game at that point, right? So if something that I'm a developer, I'm working on something, And I know it's achievable, but I am not there yet. I know that it requires, I need to find this specific solution that will solve my problem, and therefore I can continue. I will work day and night. I will work day and night to kind of find the solutions. I will not wait and say, okay, I'm going to spend this 8 hours and then that's it. Next day, I'm going to spend another 8 hours. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because we get addicted to finding the solution, right? So maybe middle of the night, somebody wakes up and like, oh, wait a minute, I just found that solution. And now sit on the computer and try to implement that, because until they do that, they kind of feel like, oh man, it may work or it may not work. I need to find out. So these guys literally spending day and night, right? So the next point that I'm going to give you, these guys are literally working day and night and delivering their code, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm sorry, this is a problem, that is a problem, and give them an attitude. You should not, right? You should be like, hey, look, so there's these bugs, trying to help you out. Let's fix those here. I'm gonna assign it to you. I already created this story. Don't ever look at them like, oh man, this guy always have a bug. Don't ever talk to them like they didn't do the work. Trust me, to get to where they are, to deliver the code, they probably didn't sleep for the last 2 nights. So you want to be as open-minded as possible to make sure that you're not giving them attitude like, oh man, why always you miss this, you miss this to like this type of issues, why always there's a bug. It's okay, it's a teamwork. You find the bugs, he fixes, that's it, period, right? Just be friends. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes like when we join our first job, we kind of take it too far. Like we kind of get a little bit cocky. Oh man, yeah, this bug, all these guys are these, developers, they're doing this. Or even the tester, we assume things about other people. Don't make assumptions. Try to be as friendly as possible, and always be like humble, and try to be try to be as friendly as possible, even if the tester doesn't know what they're doing. You'll see like sometimes you'll see somebody got hired, and for a fact he went from, let's say, another school like PNT or something, right? Just help them, like no need to like assume like, oh, this guy didn't faked his stuff and just join the company. Just it's fine, just be part of the team and help the person. That is better. But just know one thing is that in a professional environment, if you go out to your manager and say, hey, I think Rajesh, who just joined, he has no idea about nothing, right? And he's he's clueless. Guess who's gonna be fired? You are, right? You cannot just accuse somebody of something, or even like you shouldn't talk about somebody, right? Unless they come to you, the manager's like, hey, I'm looking at poor performance of this person. What do you have an idea? You're like, I'm sorry. Like you're just gonna say, okay, my opinion is that, I don't know, like I didn't really work with him. I can't really definitely say what performance that he's been doing, but he's been good in terms of communication, right? You don't have to get somebody fired. You don't have to like, they're not taking your salary. Let's just keep it this way. And the company is not your company. The company has money, right? So they can, spend. So never ever talk behind anybody or bad about anybody when you join a team. And you'll trust me, you'll enjoy your job if you do that way. With that said, it's 2:13. What I will do is that I think today was a very good in terms of giving you guys and understanding you as a person, right? Because like this something that you should have been like knowing few things, like some of you guys really fall short. So I would recommend that you would go in and kind of understand some of the website, like somebody was earlier mentioning, like I'm gonna give you guys. So somebody was earlier answering questions and it seems like came from this website. I'll tell you about a story about this website, right? Any question here and any question and answer here, I know by heart. Let's just say it this way, right? So in this website, right, when I first started and I was pretty much looking for opportunities, on my first interview, I realized, oh shit, I don't know a lot, right? So I Google and I'm looking for interview question. I find this. As soon as I read his information right here, like why he wrote this and things like that, he just told me like, okay, I gotta memorize everything that I can. right? So then what I did, I just printed this, and it's literally, I think, 40 pages when you print this. Let me see, it's like 99 something questions like that, right? So 90 questions. Before it was 99 questions. So pretty much all of these was printed, and then I decided to like 2 or 3 pages per day, right, to just memorize them. Some of the question doesn't need memorization because it's like a story situation, like what I will do and things like that. What is my like, for example, what is my expectation, what is my goal? These are a story basis, so not everything you'll have to memorize, but you will probably have to memorize the first 10 or 15 questions, because that is all about, right? So for example, you got test case, you got test plan and use case right here. Can you tell me about yourself? So this is something that you don't have to worry about. I will be helping you developing your own tell me about yourself, so you can kind of sound different instead of sound same as this guy. Then you got yourself test plan, you got yourself test cases, what will you do with test cases and all that stuff, right? So this thing, like initially, like I'm talking about back in beginning of 2013, I memorized every single questions, and within like weeks I got jobs. I had 2 offers right away. So just think about it, like if you simply read once but you don't memorize it, it still adds a lot of value. It adds a lot of value because this is going to give you a little bit more for you to open your mind to and understand what you need to know, or at least understand what really happens in an interview, what kind of questions that you may get. But this is not definitely like, okay, so the recent interviews, they don't ask these questions, but these questions are still important for you to know, because you can actually talk about these even if they don't ask, right? You can talk about this stuff, but it's really good to read as a reading materials. So qaquestions.net is something that I would say read once or twice if you have time. But like I said, it's nothing happens to, like, you have to put the work on, in order for you to be as good as you should be. Otherwise, who's doing the work, right? Don't expect a result without putting the effort, right? If you never bought the ticket, then don't expect to win a jackpot, right? So just keep that in mind. Always be ready and study. Like I said, this week we are putting 2 people in the market, and it's because they follow up, they did their interviews, and we feel like they're okay to go to the market, so we're going to do that. But at any point of time when we are teaching you guys, even if you, like, let's say on your second week and you said, look, I had previous classes, I did other classes somewhere else, and I did Udemy and I feel I'm confident, can I go to the market? We will evaluate you. We will make sure that you're ready for the market, and we will then help you toward getting the job. Once you are ready for market, you will get one-on-one help. You're no longer going to have a group help. You're going to be either, I will be reaching out to you time to time to what to do, what not to do. And at that time, I will be mentoring you to get interviews. Once you get the interview, then I'll be mentoring you on the interview itself, what you should be prepping for, and when should you be setting up the interview, because sometime I will be there for you during the interview. So think about, all these things that we're going to be doing for you, but I need for now your 100% attention and focus, and take this seriously, so that way we can take it seriously. If you're not serious, you're going to see delay in communications, is because we know that you're slacking. So therefore we have to focus on people that are not slacking, right? So just keep that in mind. You need something, just text, just ask us, right? It doesn't really but put it in the group channel, right? So just ask us the question, and then you can proceed with whatever you need to do. But at least ask us and say, hey, this is what I need, I'm stuck, what can I do? All right, with that said, let me just spend the next 20 minutes on explaining what will be the next class. And what I said is that we're going to be learning BDD. So what is BDD? And then the last framework that we did, still remember, you guys, I'm going to be giving you guys a couple of minutes to show me what you did in the class live with everybody else, so that way, and I'm sure not everybody is ready, so let's not do that right now. but let's talk about BDD. Okay, so now behavior driven development, right? We need to talk about that. What is that and what is Cucumber? So far, we know that we created a framework with Java, Maven, seconds being slow, Maven, JUnit, and then we had, what else did we have? JUnit, Maven, Java, Selenium, right? Whatever. And now the new thing is Cucumber, right? So Java is a programming language that these following things were built with. Okay, Maven, JUnit, and Selenium WebDriver were built with Java. Now Selenium supports multiple languages, so it doesn't have to be just Java, but we're taking the Java version of Selenium, right? Now these are sort of helping us with our framework. For example, Maven, the job of Maven is to help us manage these dependencies. So it manages the version of Java, it manages version of JUnit, Selenium, Cucumber, and Maven itself. So it keeps tracks of everything that you need for your framework to work. Okay, so it's a dependency manager, right? Java is just a programming language that we will be writing our code in. Maven helps you to manage your dependencies. The JUnit we will be using for assertion. JUnit is a framework, but it is part of our framework that we'll be building. But JUnit helps you to put assertion. What is assertion? We're basically validation. We're doing some sort of validation. We're saying, okay, look for this or look for that. And if you don't find it, fail it, right? Something like that. So JUnit will help us to write assertions. Without JUnit, without Maven, you have to write the code yourself with Java. All right. Now, do we want to reinvent the wheel? No, we don't, because Maven and Java JUnit is already there to do this work more efficiently. Somebody already wrote hundreds of lines of code that we would like to use ourselves. So these Maven and Java package, they contain code that we can use. Okay, so that's what we will be using. Selenium handles browser. Selenium tells the browser what to do. Okay, the browser listens to Selenium, right? So we can say, Selenium can say, hey browser, visit this website, and it visits, right? Then saying, hey browser, can you collect all the items on the page? Then Selenium will say that to the browser, and browser will return all these items from here. And then you're going to use Java to say, if I find these items, and you're going to use JUnit to say, if these items are there, then I want to say it's pass. I want to say the test pass. Okay, so just giving you some visuals or giving you some idea through this conversation, but know that this is what happens. Then we got Cucumber. Now, what is Cucumber? Cucumber helps you to write your test in plain English. Okay, you're writing your test in plain English in BDD, behavior driven development. Okay, so this is more than just testing. BDD is more than just testing, because that involves the entire team. Because what BDD allows you to do is that you explain the behavior. If you write the user story, then your product team or your business team will write the test in acceptance criteria. CRITERIA, and they're going to be writing it something like this: feature, right? And like, for example, login, user should be able to log in. So you're going to say like let's say you work for Facebook, right? So let's say Facebook FB user should be able to log in, right? For example, that's the feature, just the login page. Then you got yourself scenarios. Scenarios is basically scenario one. They're gonna say verify valid user can log in. So now given user enters valid ID and password, when user clicks on login button, then the user should be logged in, right? So similar to that, we can have so many other scenarios. For login, you can have, I believe you can have hundreds of scenarios, including security, including UI, including encryption, all these things that you will have to validate, character limits and everything. So we'll talk about that, because in an interview, they ask you, tell me test case for login. And trust me, that is a very frequent question. So is verify invalid user cannot log in, right? Should not log in. So you can say user invalid. So invalid user ID and password is correct, whatever. User clicks on login button, then the user should not be logged in, right? So similar to that, this is your user story, by the way. The whole thing is a user story, and user story contains acceptance criteria in plain English, just like this. What Cucumber allows you to do, you take the same scenario and write automation test, right? Cucumber reads this and understand what this is for. So what, as a QA engineer, what we will do, we'll take this plain English and we copy this and we put it in our script, just like this, okay? And the script, we're gonna say, for example, login, the file name should be login.feature, right? And feature is an extension, file extension. Therefore, it knows exactly what feature means, right? And now we're going to be writing features, acceptance criteria. We don't need to, we already know this is a feature, and we're going to be pasting this. Then for each line, we're going to have to write code. For example, given user enters valid user ID and password. It doesn't just, how it will understand what is user ID, password, locator, action, nothing. We haven't give anything. So we have to create another class, okay? Another class somewhere else. And we have to say, whenever we call this given, like this phrase, whenever we call this phrase, okay? So whenever we call this phrase, the code should be something like this. So let me just open curly brace and close curly brace right there. So since we're writing in Java, so obviously this code is not going to execute. So I'm going to just, this is for idea, okay? So we are saying somewhere else, right? Whenever we call this, right? Execute this driver dot find element by ID, and now username, right? You have to find ID. So for example, ID is username, and I'm just putting it in like username and then dot send keys if you want to enter the invalid username, right? So send keys takes some sort of argument. So you can say, if this is a valid one, then we have to say valid user, right? So valid user, so it could be like valid user that the test data is given by your manager or something, and the name, the username could be valid user, something like that, right? Then you got to do the same thing for password, and then send keys. The password could be like user PASS valid, right? So it could be valid, something like that, right? You can create anything. This is your environment. This is QA environment. So however you want to name, you can name them. So think about this way: you write a plain English somewhere else, not in the same file, somewhere else you're writing code. So as long as you call this, it will, the way computer understands, when you call this, it doesn't really care about what this line means. This sentence, it doesn't care. It knows that this sentence means that I have to execute this plain English, okay? Sorry, this code. So it will execute this code, therefore it will do the work what we are writing. So Cucumber allows us to write the test in plain English, and then the plain English, we provide the step definition. This is called step definition. Once we provide the definition, the computer understands the code and executes only the code. It doesn't care about this, okay? Now you may say, okay, then why we even write this extra like plain English? Is because this plain English at some point becomes a documentation for somebody gets new hired. They can actually read and understand what the test cases are. It's cleaner. You can also know exactly what this line should do. And in the future, when you need to update your test, you can just go to the test and say, yes, this test should use valid username and valid password. But unfortunately, it's not using that. So I'm going to update these steps, right? So it's going to be faster for you to maintain your test cases in automation. So the next time we meet, we're going to build this framework from scratch. Even if you did not participated in the last several classes, you should still be able to do what I will be doing the next class, because everything that we will be doing in terms of writing test cases in for automation, it will be scratch. So unfortunately, today we spent way too much time with some essentials that you guys should know, right? And I'm pretty proud of that we completed that. But in the future, if you feel like there is a topic that you feel that is pretty much gray area for you, you don't understand, maybe that topic is something that you need more clarification, just tell me and I'll explain it just like this, because you need to be solid on some things at least, right? Because you got to be a tester first. Automation comes the second, right? Automation, yes, we're teaching you guys, but I'm sure you're not going to be able to absorb 100%. Everything that we're going to be teaching you, you'll probably grasp 20 to 30%, and that should be good enough to get a job at this point. But you got to try your 100%, because if you don't, then you'll not even reach that 20% or 30% for automation. But first, make sure that you are a good tester, and then automation comes second. Automation is what? It's just a tool that helps you write tests, so that way you don't have to do manual testing. But that doesn't mean it is a different kind of tester. You're still a tester. You're still a tester who can leverage automation to help yourself, or you don't have to do that. But regardless of the situation, regardless of what you need to do at work, you will be, you need to be a good tester. Some of you guys, when you guys join a company, they will say, okay, automation is not on right now on our radar, but in the future it can help. What you can do then, the frameworks that we build, you can use those frameworks in the future. You can actually take those and say, look, I was just playing around with it. I wrote few test cases, and then we're going to improve up on this test on these frameworks, because those frameworks, over the years, you're going to have to improve it, because it's based on the need of a team and the project. So simply, if I just give you a framework and say it has everything, it'll not fit the criteria or whatever you need for your team or project. So you need to know what exactly you need, and you need to be able to add here and there to make it fit for your project. But if you create a demo, like let's say your manager, and say, hey, look, I think we need to do automation. I want to show you a demo. So you then sit down with your manager and say, hey, look, this is what I did. I wrote a few test cases, and this is how it works. And your manager will be impressed, because you guys up until now didn't do automation. And now he's like, oh, okay, that's great. We can do a lot more. You're going to say, look, this is just me writing a draft. It is not final. So it will take a little bit of time for me to like make it full scale automated framework. And then you can buy some more time. You can say like, okay, next 6 months, I'm going to be spending half of my time on the automation. Is that fine? And manager says, yeah, that's definitely fine. Continue and work on the automation. Then what you can do is that then you go into Udemy, buy a nice course, and each and every day you see which capability, which features that you need, what type of features you need and why, and you then watch the video, learn it yourself, then implement. You have 6 months or even more. So anything can be done if you put your mind to it. Let me, with that said, we got 2:34. Any questions before we end it for today? And I will most likely, I'll see you tomorrow, but let's see what's the agenda for Shantabai. He may do the class, but I will do the class so we can go into a new framework with Cucumber. Any questions? All right, silent means no questions. That is great. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow, and have yourself a great Saturday. We'll talk soon. Talk to you guys later.
All right, Julbhai, just a quick request that please confirm that you add me to the different channel.
Right. I'll add you as soon as we get off here.
And also, I'm going for market this Monday. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And you
I'll
already
reach
get my
out to you
email address
personally,
and phone
like
number.
you and the other, you and Raviul, both of you guys, I'll reach you guys out personally, to make sure that we are all set. The way that things takes place for marketing is that you have to have a one-on-one meeting with me to make sure that you